Dr. John DeMartini. This is one of the most amazing and inspiring shows that you can listen into. If you want to be on the edge of your seats, if you want to open up your heart, if you want to expand your mind, and you want to meet incredible people, stay tuned because you're just about to experience a transformative radio show that will change your life. And you're listening to the Dr. Pat Show that's coming up right next.
Welcome to the Dr. Pat Show. Talk radio to thrive by. Powerful, inspiring, and coming to you live, bringing you stories of people like you and me, busting through and living life full out. Get ready to dare to wonder what your life would be like if you knew you could not fail.
Hey, everybody, welcome to the show. This show is a deeply moving and empowering episode. And if many of you know years ago an effort that the Dr. Pat Show put forward, and you were involved in it, but it wasn't enough. And when you have a loss, and then you have the root cause of the loss, you ask yourself, what else can I do? Today, joining me, Erica Gifford Mills, to talk about louder than the silence, breaking the stigma of military mental health. And this is something that goes very, very deep, probably for people that have lost a dear one like Erica has. It goes deeper than any of us can imagine. But when you turn that grief, that loss into action, you become a spokesperson to literally break and crack the shell open of silence. Today, we're going to be talking about how, after the devastating loss of her son, a U.S. Marine, you'll hear more about Sergeant Connor Mills, she turned her grief into purpose. And in order to become who she has become, it requires a fierce determination, commitment beyond the walls of administration, and someone who is out in the world that just will not be silenced today. Erica, thank you for taking this conversation on, and I'm so sorry for your loss.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I appreciate all that Transformation Talk Revolution has done to help me get the word out. And for that, I'm very grateful.
So you and I have this thing in common. For me, I didn't even understand it when it was happening. I didn't understand the mechanics of it. I didn't know it was happening. But for you, this is very close and you've seen it. Give us an idea of what your journey has been like into that space of becoming a mental health advocate.
Yeah. So as you said, my journey into this work came from the most devastating place a mother can stand, the loss of a son, a loss of a child. And Connor was a U.S. Marine and he died by suicide. And in the aftermath, I saw something that shook me just as deeply as the loss itself. People didn't know how to talk about it. They whispered and they avoided his name. They didn't know what to say. We're a very grief-adverse society. And I remember thinking, we have to do better than this. So I made the decision I would be louder than the silence, louder than that whisper, not just for Connor, but for every person who feels unseen, unheard, and alone. That's what led me here. And it's why I continue the work through advocacy, speaking, and initiatives like our second annual military mental health and suicide prevention benefit that we're hosting at the Five Fours Distillery in Newton Falls, Ohio, because awareness alone isn't enough. We need to take action.
Yeah, this is so important. Look, I think I shared with you that my mom committed suicide, but it was the best known secret until my dad died and my stepmom had kept letters from my mom from Bellevue, which is was a mental hospital, and shared them with me. And that's the devastation of silence because, here I am growing up thinking, what happened? Watching my sister get blamed for something nobody talked about, and it killed her. So let's walk people through this notion of misconception, which really leads to a mega stigmatized version of how people live.
Yeah. I mean, you think about it, mental health, especially in the military community, but in civilian world as well, right? It's something that people whisper because, and I think it's because strength has been misdefined for far too long. In the military, you're trained to push through, to complete the mission, to not show weakness. But what happens is that pain doesn't go away when it gets ignored. It grows, it festers, right? Just like an infection. And when we don't talk about it, we unintentionally reinforce the idea that struggling is failure. It's not, it's human. We all struggle. And the more we normalize the conversations
Yeah.
in the workplace, at the dining room table, with friends, the more lives we can save.
Yeah. You know, I've been watching this television series called The Madison with Michelle Pfeiffer. And I'm not going to go into detail about it, except for the one scene where her grief is so great. She's sitting in a car that she just picked up that belonged to the people that passed, died in the crash, and she opens up the middle console. And what do you think she finds? She finds a gun. And there's a moment in that scene that you do not need words for. And you're watching it and you understand what grief does to a person, but also what loss does. What happens when you're not getting help? In her situation, she was getting no help, and she had literally had a mental health situation. Now, that's just a short frame, but the only reason I'm mentioning it, but they didn't have to include that in the movie. They did not have to include that, not one bit. But we understand why it's included because there isn't enough being done, is there?
No, no. And there's so many harmful misconceptions, right? One of the biggest is that strong people don't struggle.
Yeah.
And I mean, I know how many times I've heard, oh, you're being so strong. I'm like, oh no, I'm not. I right before this, I went through my breast cancer journey, and I never questioned why I got breast cancer. It happens, right? People get sick. But it wasn't until my son passed that I went, huh, this is why I got breast cancer. Because if I didn't go through that journey before and learn how to accept help, I would have never asked for help
Yeah.
during this time because I wouldn't be here. And I think that is a very big misconception. You know, it couldn't be further from the truth. Some of the strongest, most disciplined, most selfless individuals are the ones carrying the heaviest burdens. Connor was that. You know, he was his platoon sergeant. He helped so many of his fellow Marines come off the ledge, right? Another misconception is that talking about it makes it worse. It doesn't.
Yes.
That silence makes it worse. Conversation creates connection, and that connection can save lives because when you are open to having that conversation and not afraid of it, or don't say, oh, they just want attention, or oh, they really can't handle their emotions, or something like that, people retreat within themselves again. And that's not what they need to do. They need to feel that they're in a
Mm.
safe place, that they can talk about it. And I think that is one of the unique challenges about active military members and veterans, because there's that layering effect, the trauma, the transition, the identity loss, the survivor's guilt, all those things that they go through in their service time and then after. And then they return to a civilian world that often doesn't understand those experiences. So they're carrying this invisible wound in environments that don't always know how to see them or how to support them. And that's where we need to be able to have those conversations, and we need to
Yeah.
normalize it in every arena, in every circle.
Yeah. And let's talk about the military because, I gave an example that was not about the military, but I do want to talk about the military because you and I have seen this. I was shocked when I started that work with, Jim McDormand, Congressman McDormand, and I didn't even know that the military people could not opt for a non-military solution. So what am I trying to say? I want to talk about non-military solutions. So what do I mean by not opt for a non-military solution? Well, they couldn't go outside of the military. Now, I don't know if that's changed, but I was shocked. And in just indicating that you needed military help, that alone is stigmatized, isn't it?
Yeah, because asking for help can feel like risking everything for them.
Yeah.
Is it career advancement? Is it your identity? It's your sense of purpose. What are your battle buddies going to feel like? What is your command going to say? You think about it. If you're saying that you need mental health, or maybe that you have suicidal ideations, I'll use Marines as example. Marine is a rifleman first, right? That's their rifleman creed. And if you say you have suicidal ideations, they're going to take away your weapon. If you
Yeah.
take away your weapon, what am I? When they've been trained to be the strong one, vulnerability can feel unsafe. So many choose silence instead, right? It's adapt, overcome. Well, you can't. You can push through for some time. Mental health is just an injury like a physical one. So you might be able to push through on a broken leg or a broken arm for a little bit to complete something that's right in front of you. But eventually you need to seek treatment for
Yeah.
it to get better. It's the same way. And we have to normalize that, right? If my brain didn't tell me what to do, I wouldn't be able to walk. I wouldn't be able to do anything. So that's where we have to change it, making it safer to speak than to stay silent.
Yeah, I remember Congressman McDermott and the medical director at the time, and this is Washington State. And I remember going to my first meeting, and they're talking. I said, I don't understand why giving mental health. I called it a mental health tune-up. Why it's not mandatory in the military. And
Yeah.
those two guys all respectfully laughed. Now they weren't laughing about it. They were laughing because they didn't understand why either. And what I mean by mandatory is there are professions where you have to be in shape. You go through physicals. I mean, the military is one of them. You make sure you can do whatever you need to do to serve.
Yeah.
I never understood that.
Well,
I
and I
never
think it's
understood it.
getting better, right? I
Mhm.
know it's getting better, and it's not necessarily command's fault either,
No.
because think about it when you go into, I'll say this, I'll make this an I statement. I go into the doctor, after going in to see my oncologist, and they say, "So how many drinks do you have a night?" Oh, I have 2 glasses of wine. And my sister laughed at me and I said, I do. She didn't ask me how many ounces I have. So maybe she asked me how many drinks 2 glasses of wine. So, we all lie at some point to our healthcare
Hmm.
providers. And when you go in, if you're not being honest,
Yeah.
w- people can't help. But it's because there is that stigma, right? If you think about the roles and the identity and the mission first, you know, all that plays a huge role when your identity is built around being the protector, the leader, the one others rely on. Admitting that you're struggling can feel like you're letting people
Yeah.
down. But the truth is, it's not. Real strength includes knowing when you need support, and redefining that is critical. And that's where we need to get better at and be able to say, we all go through this. How do we prepare ourselves to better transition,
Yeah.
to you know get help after we're seeing some horrible things in war, in missions, in your friends dying next to you, those sort of things. How do we better prepare them for that? And it may not be any way you can better prepare, but hey, get that help, get that information, and then afterwards continue to do it and have those open conversations.
This is one of these things where it does get tricky, doesn't it? Because, and I want to talk to you about the upcoming event that you talked about, mentioned earlier, because it's very important to have conversations. And I was talking to a friend of mine whose husband, military, ex-military, took his life. And I said, well, did you see anything? Did you? Yes, I did. Okay, but I couldn't report it. I mean, it's not just the individual that's stigmatized, the family does. And so, how is your annual event, right, honoring your son and others? how can we start to move the needle? So
Yeah.
it not just the military person themselves, but the family can have a conversation.
Yeah, and that's so important. And it's hard for veterans and active military open up to a civilian because it's not the relatable. But we can man ourselves with information. And the second annual military mental health and suicide prevention benefit in Newton Falls, Ohio, at the Five Fours Distillery, it's bringing people together, right? It's veterans, it's active military, it's families, it's community members, and wonderful organizations that can help support, like Stop Soldier Suicide, the Mighty Oaks Foundation, Whiskey Valor Foundation. Those are just three off the top of my head. They will be there to not only tell them about their organization, but how they can help, and also how their help may be no cost to very little cost to active military, veterans, and first responders. So they can support, folks can support, even if you can't make it. We have got online, and we'll have the link in the show here that you can make a donation, because all funds that we raise through our shirt sales, we'll have patches, we'll have food, we'll have all sorts of things. Everything that gets raised goes directly to Stop Soldier Suicide. And that's helping provide critical resources and support to those in need. And it's 100% of the donations that we receive. And I think the ways listeners can support is show up, have the conversation, check in on people, not just once. If they say they're okay, continue to check in, listen without trying to fix, just sit with them, and support the organizations that are doing the work. They need those funds to keep going because many of their services are free. They pay for the transportation to the retreats. They pay for the retreats itself, everything that's included. And we want to be able to continue that so there are resources and there are no restraints for people getting help.
I want to ask you a question too, because I remember going through this and being extremely frustrated. But I have a question for you because you're very close to it. You're an advocate. And I want to ask you, what would you change if you could change something about how we approach mental health in this country, right? Not in other countries. There are other countries that do a pretty good job. But here in the United States, what are your top three things you'd be looking at?
Oh, conversation first, right? And by the leaders, both in the military and the civilian world, to create that psychologically safe environment by going first, by being willing to say, I don't have it all together. There was a staff sergeant that stood up in front of everybody, the whole platoon, and said, I've sought treatment. It's not weak. And mouths dropped because he was known as the the strong one, the big bad guy, right? And so by them being willing to say that I don't have it all together, starts creating space for real conversations, not just performance, not just having the PowerPoint presentation on mental health. That the psychological safety, it doesn't come from policies, it comes from people. It's from leaders who model the honesty, the empathy, and the humanity. And we need to do more of that. And I would also say it looks like truth by showing up fully, not just as the leader, but as the human behind that title, and be there for you're there for your battle buddies every day. Be there for every reason as well. And when leaders do that, and when your equals, your peers do that, that gives everyone else permission to do the same. And that's what real connection, and that's where the conversations start, right? And we have to do that. We have to have that conversation, make sure that you are just sitting there listening, or not even talking, just being with somebody can make all the difference in the world.
Yeah. And Mark and I talk about grief groups that are available because we do a show where people call in, and the level of grief is just devastating, for both of us. and we're prepared to send them to get some help. So I want to ask you, um, I'm not sure they feel better after they call in with whatever is said to them, but hope is on the edge. You know, it's like a teeter-totter, right? But for you, what does it look like for you? Because I know you're an advocate, I know you're taking action, but what does hope look like for you as the mom and the many other family members that are here?
Is that we stop whispering when somebody
Yeah,
says suicide, when we stop whispering when we say, oh, she has mental health, oh, she was,
yeah,
right? Hope looks like conversation. It looks like community. It looks like people choosing to show up for each other in ways we didn't before. And it's in every person who decides to speak instead of stay silent. That's
yeah.
what hope really looks like for me today.
Yeah, you know what? Here, I went through this. You know, I'm in my 36 years of alcohol recovery and longer than that for drugs. And I will tell you that okay, don't take this wrong, people, but COVID was one of the best things that happened for all of the 12-step programs because it was so contained. There wasn't any online groups. And I often wondered about this, about why there isn't more of these kinds of groups for people like we're talking about, where folks can just go. But the fact that you're in an AA program, and boy, did I get beat up when we did one of the first AA type shows, addiction shows, because that's silence. You carry that. What are you not supposed to tell your friends? It is worse than the disease. Isn't that what you hope to break and not make the silence worse than the conversation?
Absolutely. We have to normalize it. And, mental health needs to be part of everyday conversation, just like physical health, right? We
Yeah.
talk about get 10,000 steps a day. Well, what about your mental health? No shame, no stigma, no silence, because when we normalize it, we make it safer for people to ask for help.
So I want to ask you this question. Tell us a little bit about the event. We talked
Yes.
about it briefly, but I really want to know what the event's about. Give us some
Yes.
inspiration here.
So, everybody's not everybody, I should say, many people have heard of 22 for 22, right? So the message behind it is community connection. So from noon to 11 p.m., we're going to have many different bands, musical performances, all donating their time and their talent for this event. We're going to have food trucks. We're going to have games for kids. We're going to have raffles. We're selling shirts online and at the event, patches for you motorcycle enthusiasts for your jackets. We're going to have vendors, fun things, making hats, those sort of things. And then also educational booths
Mhm.
on where people can get help. So even if it's not for you, it's for a loved one, getting that education. We will open it up with unless they can't make it because of a funeral, which we'll hope that doesn't happen. We're
Mhm.
going to have a color guard and an opening prayer. And then we're going to let the fun times begin,
Yeah. Yeah.
honoring, celebrating, not being quiet about it. And, celebrating the life, because it's more than how people passed
Yeah.
and what they're going through. It's about their life. And this event is more than just honoring my son. It's honoring all those who are struggling and all those who we lost so that we can prevent it, so we can
Yeah.
reduce that number.
Now, how can people get involved? How can they donate even if they're not going to go to the event? Because, you know, funding is important.
Yes, yes, and I have a goal, $25,000 for that day. Last year we raised 13,000. It was the first event 9 months after he passed, and this year is going to be bigger and better. They can go to stopsoldiersuicide.donordrive.com/campaigns/second annual military mental health suicide prevention. That
Mm.
will go to donate for this specific event. It's online. We'll put it in the show highlights and everything for you. And it will be available and up through the event so that we can continue to raise funds to raise awareness. And they all goes to Stop Soldier Suicide for prevention. And for postvention, they also have a wonderful black box project where they take devices and try to gather information to see how they can prevent suicide. And their whole goal is to reduce the number of military suicides by 2030 by, I believe it is 40%.
Yeah, awareness is important, but also breaking the silence. I mean, you could see in my mom's case, you could see she was on that pathway. And, you know, when somebody drinks and uses, and then you give them more drugs to calm them down, and you're not really looking at what's going on underneath, or not even asking the question. I mean, it's so stigmatized for both men and women, by the way, that if we're not made aware of what to look for, and what you're doing is really shining a light for all of us to get a lot smarter.
That is important to see the signs, and please know, because I still have these questions, right? Is what did I miss? Was I so wrapped up in my own crap that I missed something? You will always have those questions. Don't. I mean, you can't just, hindsight is 2020, but if you start learning the signs and checking in on people, then you can do more help and do more good, because action matters.
Erica, one last thing, personal message, but also tell people about you, how they can find out more about you.
I say personal message first. If you are struggling, know that you are not weak. You are human. You are not alone. There's a 988 suicide and crisis line. Please call it. You can call, text, chat. It's important to reach out, even if you can't get a hold of somebody, one of your friends, one of your family, or you feel like you don't have anybody. There are people out there that will listen, because the world is a better place with you in it. If you want to learn more about me, I do have a show right here on Transformation Talk Revolution, Get Rooted Radio with Erica Gifford Mills. You can also go to Balanced Symmetry. That's BALANCEDSYMMETREE.com. You can learn more about myself and my speaking engagements and what I have going on.
And I want to thank you for doing this. I want to say one thing to everybody, and I know you'll nod your head. Suicide doesn't discriminate. Everybody's up for it. And I want to thank our youth. I want to give a nod to our youth, because I work with you. I want to give a nod to our youth for really shining a light on your generation, on what you've seen. But we still need to do more. And Erica Gifford Mills is doing that. Thank you, Erica, for everything.
Thank you. And if I can just say one more thing, we don't need more silence, folks. We need more courage. Courage to speak, to listen, and to show up. Because together we can be louder than the silence. And that's how we save lives. Thank you, Dr. Pat.
Thank you, Erica. And thanks to all of you out there. And please don't be silent because you're afraid of hurting somebody's feelings, because you want to be liked. Please don't be silent. Find a way for you to know what to do with what you see. We'll see you next time.